Did you know that the forgotten founder of Zionism went on to play a leading role in Agudas Yisrael, or that Rav Chatzkel Abramsky was responsible for the continued presence of the Muslim Waqf on Har HaBayis? It turns out that the margins of history tell the real story. Behind the Times dives into the big concepts and overlooked moments that carry vast meaning, all through the lens of Torah and rabbinic thought. Behind the Times, with Rabbi Ephraim Zalman Galinsky and Gedalia Gutentag. Welcome back, everyone, to Behind the Times. This is an unusual episode. I'm sitting opposite my dear Ephraim Zalman Galinsky here in Mishpacha's studio. But we're also, it's not just a location, this is an interesting time. Because, Rabbi Ephraim, if you go out to the streets, I would say it's almost like a seam. We're here on the tectonic seam between two giant subterranean plates. One is Ben Azmanim, and one is the very, very different atmosphere of Elul. Elul is in the air, and I think right next door, the building here in Givat Shaul, right next door, there is there's a branch of Feldheim or whatever it is, and they're selling, and people are going to buy the Gemaras, and the Bachram are binding the Gemaras. So you have this seam in time between people are still going on holiday or vacation at Tiyulim, but at the same time, Elul, Zman is in the air.
Knocking on the door.
I feel we've turned that corner. We're in the final stretch of Ben Azmanim.
By the way, the Mekubalim,
yeah,
the Mekubalim, they start working on Rosh Hashanah from Tu B'Av.
I think I should join the Mekubalim because Elul is a ridiculously busy time, and I think I'm well behind. I should have been learning Shari Tshuva. But anyway, in that, there's no better. This is why I'm so delighted to be doing what we're doing, Rabbi Galinsky, because here I am sitting opposite you, which is always a lovely experience. It doesn't matter what happens afterwards, subsequently. But quite besides this, preparation for Elul, because in this twilight zone between Ben Azmanim and Zman, and particularly Elul, I think it's a good time to start focusing on, some of the internal preparation, but also focusing on the uniqueness of these times themselves, because it's my theory, and I want to share it with you, and we're going to share it with others as well, that the very notion, this considering what Ben Azmanim is and what Zman is, right, not in a kind of cerebral way, but in a very practical way, can actually tell us how to use the time, what we're actually aiming for. Maybe that sounds very high-flown, but I think once we get down to it, it's actually very practical. And I want to jump in, really, I know you've got different things to share, but I want to start with something from a shtickle, from a sefer that I believe will not be learnt and studied enough in this Elul, which is the Alter of Novardok's Madregas HaOdam.
When I heard that you were going to speak about the Madregas HaOdam, I was thrilled. I'll tell you why. Because I grew up in the world of Chevron Slobodka.
Yeah.
And all my Rebbeim are from that world. So even though one of my primary Rebbeim, which was the great Goyen and Elul, or Baron Yafin, you probably know him from the Ritu and Yevomes and the Dorim, but he was a grandson of the Alter.
Rabbi Avram Yafin was the son-in-law.
The son-in-law of the Alter of Novardok. But he never gave us over anything from Novardok, and I never heard anything from Novardok. Even though I studied a lot of Sifrei Machshava and Sifrei Musar, I never was exposed. So I was very happy to hear from you something from the Alter of Novardok.
I definitely want to hear this, and I think it's one of the Madregas HaOdam's sefer is really off the beaten track. There was a guy in front of me, rows in front of me, Mir, who I remember, I think I saw him years ago learning through it, and perhaps it was him who sort of piqued my. And the Alter of Novardok was, in a way, so down to earth, so real, and talking to Amcha, because the movement, it was a movement of total revolution. They literally had to go, they found this network of yeshivas, and I'm sure you're going to get onto that later, but they were dealing with somehow very gritty situations. The Alter himself came as a businessman who got a shock one day when he heard the Yisrael Salanta saying that we're just, speaking, and he said, unless I jump in straight away now to the whole thing, he literally gave up everything overnight. He was a businessman, came, as it were, more into the Beis Medrash from outside, and I suppose that figures into so much of what he was and what he said. But I want to jump straight into this by way of something that just to define where we're heading at this. And dear listeners, I'm sorry if this is slightly more discursive, but okay, we'll have your shmooze of him. We'll get to the point eventually.
Part of Novardok was to have a shmooze. If you hear about the bursa, right?
Yes.
They used to get up and argue with each other about each other's faults.
Rabbi Ephraim, here I have a target. My faults are written all over me. So maybe we'll leave that for part 2, my faults in the Alter of Novardok. But what I want to get to, I really think we're examining a shtickle that is talking about Noach, the who built the Teva, of Teva fame. But when you digest the shtickle and you understand, it's really talking about 2 engines for growth. The engine and really authentically finding your own role in Yiddishkeit, which is so, so important, I think, is at the heart over here. But if you don't mind, I'm just going to tell you the following, introduce this by the following mashal that could be taken from real life. And I heard this from my own mashgiach, the junior mashgiach, as it were, 20 years ago in Gateshead Yeshiva, Rabbi Gershon Miller, who is no longer over there. He was, Gershon Miller Shlita is the head of the Moistus, I think, in Beis Yehuda in Detroit. Then he's, and a big Baal Machshava, and
this is the Yeshiva Gdola of Gateshead.
He was
the second mashgiach in the Yeshiva Gdola.
It was before there was Rav Matisyahu was the main mashgiach, and then you had Mordechai Yosef Kanovsky. And when he left, Mordechai Yosef Kanovsky is a big goin.
Right. He became the mashgiach.
And then quite a number of years later, in fact, Rav Gershon Miller, and Rav Gershon said the following. I remember this vividly because he painted the scene like in the way that the Bali Musa used to like to do. Painted the scene. Imagine the following thing: you have a bacha who decides, I don't know, it's Elul, it's a chizuk, it's time for a chizuk. And so what do? The chizuk is he's going to get there in time instead of schlepping in late for davening or missing and going somewhere else. He's going to daven with the yeshiva. And not only that, in order to make the chizuk, what does he do? He says, I need to have a seder before so that I arrive properly in davening. I'm gonna arrive, and if I'm there for the seder, it's gonna be chizuk on its own, and therefore I'm definitely there for shacharis. So he prepares. It's very hard. The bacha in a dormitory, he's done everything. He's laid out his clothes the night before he goes to have a shower. He tries not to schmooze as much with everyone else.
Puts earplugs in his ears.
Puts earplugs in his ear. Correct. Forgot the earplugs, and he goes to sleep at a reasonable time, and he's fully mamish. He goes to sleep there and he wakes up. The alarm clock goes off 6 o'clock, and he manages. I suppose he turns over. Manages to drag himself out of bed by 6:15. It's a chizuk after all. And he gets his clothes, he clangs around the room a bit, disturbs his friends. But what does it matter? And by 6:35, he's striding towards the doors of the Beis Medrash. And he's on fire. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the start of something new. And he pulls open the double doors of the Beis Medrash. And in a huge wall of sound, almost knocks him over. He looks inside, and the hundreds of places are totally full of bachurim. Each bacher in the yeshiva has decided to do the same chizuk. So what does he do? He's totally broken. He's aghast. He sort of trundles over, his knuckles dragging, trundles over to his seat. He can barely make through shacharis. And suffice it to say, that's the end of the chizuk. Nothing else ever happens. It's a great tzir because it's actually so true. And I remember this years later when I was learning that what we're about to see over here, the shtickle from the Madrigas Adam, because it points to a key difficulty. We often define our growth in terms of
what the other people
are doing, overcoming the atmosphere. And the Madrigas Adam, the Alter of Novardok is going to talk about precisely this. With your permission, Rabbi Ephraim, can we jump in?
Go ahead. Yes, I'm waiting to hear.
Okay, look. I think the best way to say this is there is a machlokas which we come into Parshas Noach every year, and it takes the Alter of Novardok to point out that we actually don't really. It's something strange going on. The Torah says about Noach. It says Noach ish tzaddik tomim hoya b'doyrosav. Right? Noach built a teva. He was a great tzaddik. Now, Rashi, says that it's not so clear what it means. Tzaddik tom hoya b'doyrosav. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Meaning it's in relation to his generation. Yesh dorshin l'shvach, yesh dorshin l'gnai. There are some who say this is a good thing. So what do they mean? There are some who say that it's only tzaddik, tom hoi b'doira yisov, only in his own tzaddik, in his own generation he was a tzaddik. But if he would have been in the generation of Avraham Avinu, he would have been nothing. And there are those who say, whoever it was, Shmuel, Rav and Shmuel, who say that it's a punkt faket. What's the punkt faket? That even in the Torah of Avraham Avinu, he would have been a great tzaddik. Right?
If he was a tzaddik in this generation, in Avraham Avinu's generation, he for sure would have been a great tzaddik.
Very nice. Except it's not so nice because the Alter of Novardok says, I don't know if he uses
the implication is that there are deists who are saying that Noach wasn't such a great tzaddik. And that is what the Alter is coming to argue on.
Oh, correct. He basically says, I suppose in Lomdisha terms, you'd say that this is a machlokes and metzius. We don't like, when you're learning, you don't like to say, well, it's just a machlokes, how long the piece of string or how high the Chinaman is, right?
There's a Kabbalah from the Vilna Gaon that there's no such thing as a machlokes and metzius.
Right? Why? Because a machlokes and metzius, there's no nafkamina anyway.
Go out and check it.
Either do go check it or don't go check it. The point is, it's not something that could teach us anything, right? So what's the point of putting in the Gemara something that has they're arguing, what's the guy's name, Baruch Modcho or Modcho Baruch? Like, what's the point? It's got no nafkamina. So I suppose in the spirit of that, he rejects that. And he just says, Be'urun Shador and Kachu. He says, the explanation is like this. It's not that the machlokas between the Amoraim was how great he was. They all agree he was X level. The question is, what was the source of the greatness? What was the engine of the greatness? And the two ways of understanding it are like this. One way is, he says, that what happens is, imagine you're Noach. Noach he lived in the world was a terrible place, right? It was going absolutely to rack and ruin, and by definition it was terrible. That's why Hashem said, I'm going to destroy it. So Noach could have looked around and said, how am I going to? He says, look, I'm a middle of the road kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm happy to be a good person. But in this generation, a middle of what he called a poishrin, bishar kazu efshel livcha b'poishrin. In a time like this, you can't choose to be just a middle-of-the-road, ordinary frum Jew. It won't work. Why? Because it's such a bad environment. Unless I swim, I'll sink. Right? Loicham says you can't be loicham v'loitzoinen ki im lo yishtadel lahasig es hamadrega yosu gavoya. Doesn't try and reach the highest madrega. Hahevel oilomi bechrechim shechim matamatu is going to be pulled down by the terrible.
When there's a war, right? You can't be passive. The Rambam uses the same idea when he talks about if someone has a problem with a certain midah of his, he has to go to the exact opposite for a certain time, and then only then go back to the middle road, right? When someone is under attack, then he has to put his effort into going to the exact opposite.
So that is the explanation that the source of his greatness was the struggle to overcome.
That's one day among the
Chazal over here. And what's the other one? No. Noach had an internal combustion engine. He had his own nuclear power plant inside. It wasn't an attempt to overcome the generation. No, even in the time, in his own time, another time, it would have been the same. Doesn't make a difference where he was, because he was who he was. He was growing because he was growing. And therefore it wasn't the struggle to overcome the outside, right? No, even in a good generation, a bad generation, it's the same idea, which is a phenomenal explanation. But for me, a something very eye-opening, because what he's saying to us, essentially, the Alter is saying that there's two engines of growth, and that you have to be aware. Sometimes, I think the chiddush for me is the second one. It's Pasha, we think we're growing because I want to be an Eved Hashem, I want to be a Lamdan, I want to be this, I want to be that. No, perhaps you're growing because you've got to overcome the outside. Or perhaps you're growing because everyone else is growing. And otherwise, you arrive in the base of Medrash, 6:35 in the morning, you get bowled over by the wall of sand, you turn straight back and go back to bed. Why? Because you didn't have...
It's not unique for me.
It's not unique. It's not you. And does that make sense for Arab Ephraim?
Yes. I want to, there's a comment. Chazal, Sadna Da'ara, Chadhu.
The world is the same everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, go on. It's like they have boiled it down. What does it literally mean? Standard Arab, that the carpet of the earth is one.
Right. It's usually, by the way, it's used for halacha regarding kinyanim, I think. If someone makes a kinyan on karka in one place, it works another place, even though it's distant from one from another.
You consider to be standing on the same ground.
In our context, I want to share with you something which I think the majority of the listeners had never heard of before. But it mamish, it is the same Yesod. It is the same Yesod from the Alter of Novardok, but from a different base medrash. Okay? And I want to tell you how I got it, how I heard this word. There was a chashuv Rav who made Aliyah from America. And he learned here, he was sitting in the mirror, he learned for years in the mirror. And then he passed away at an old age. And my brother came to Menachem Avil, and the family said, listen, we found in his belongings, like hundreds of cassettes. You want to explain to the listeners what cassettes are?
If you don't know what cassette is, I don't think I can really explain. It's a... Go on, tapes.
Yeah, okay. So it's all kinds of tapes of recordings, all kinds of Gdolim, Rabbanim, Darshanim, and everything. And it says, we don't have anything to do with it. Do you want to take it? So he took it, and then he asked me, I don't have anything to do with it. Do you want it? So I took it, and I started going through these tapes, and I found a tape from Aaron Soloveitchik. Aaron Soloveitchik was a direct grandson of Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim Brisker.
How's the Mishpacha go?
How does it go? Reb Chaim had 3 sons. The oldest son was Absol Gershon. He was probably killed in the war. They don't know. The family doesn't know where he's buried, when he was killed, nothing. Just that he disappeared. And he is the father of Rabbi Moshe from Switzerland.
Right.
That's Absol Gershon. Okay? Reb Chaim's oldest son was Absol Gershon.
Hold on, which war? The First World War or the Second?
No, the Second World War.
Second World War.
Right. Okay. So his son, Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik, ran away with Rav Steinman. That everyone knows about.
Thing,
right. And the second son was Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik. We'll get back to him. And the third son was a Briskerov. Okay, that's it. The 3 sons and 1 daughter. The daughter is married to a Dafke Hassidic Talmid Chacham named Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Glickson. I wrote a whole article about him in the English Mishpacha. Mm-hmm. But Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik, the second son, was the father of Rabbi Yeshivish from Boston,
right?
From Yitzchak Elchanan. And Reb Aaron. There was another son who was a chemist, I think, and 2 daughters, I think. But the well-known sons were Rabbi Yeshivish and Reb Aaron. Reb Aaron, for the majority of the years, he was a Rebbe, and he was in Chaim Berlin, he was in Skokie in Chicago, and he had his own yeshiva called Yeshivas Brisk, Chicago. Okay, the yeshiva is still around in Chicago. Now, then, when Rabbi Yeshivish became sick, so Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik took over his share in Yitzchak Elchanan in New York. Yeah, my older brother learned by him in Yitzchak Elchanan in New York. So this was a cassette, a tape, a recording of a shir of his on the Parsha of Korach. And he raised a very interesting question. He said, after we have all the punishments, like Baruch Hu punished Korach and Dasan V'Aviram and all that, there's a new Parsha, and that is the Parsha of Mate Aaron.
Aaron's stick.
Right.
Right.
What was the Parsha there? What were we talking about over there? And Baruch says we're going to make a test, right?
And he put the stick in
You put the stick in the Chotzer Oil Moed.
And whichever
sprouts,
right? It was going
to sprout fruit and flowers.
Yeah.
And that's what happened at the end. Mata Aaron was the one that's how we know that Aaron is the B'chir Hashem, and no one has any tinies anymore. So Rabban Soloveitchik asked the obvious question. They were punished already. Like, what is the point of doing this?
Who was punished already?
Korach, Adosa, and Dasan V'Aviram. Everyone was punished.
It's already proved that they're the last man standing.
Exactly. Right. So what's the point? What's going on over here?
Extra demonstration of that he's been.
So he said something gewaldig. He said what the punishments proved was that Korach was a Rasha. But what about the tinus of Korach? The taina of Korach was Kala Eida Kulam Kedoshim.
Why should you be the leader?
Right. So true, Korach, his motives were wrong. But what about his taina? He had a good taina. Mm-hmm. Sakadosh Baruch Hu said, take a stick and put it into the Chotzer Oil Moed. What is unique about a staff in the Chotzer Oil Moed in the Midbar? He says every tree, in order for it to grow fruit and flowers, it's not enough to put it into the ground. It needs what you call surrounding care, right? It needs sunlight, it needs water, soil, cultivating, whatever it is, right? Now, the staff of Aaron was placed in the midbar without any surrounding help, right? So all the rest of the staffs did not grow anything,
right?
Because that was natural, right? Mm-hmm. But Aaron HaKohen was the only staff that grew. Now, what does that show us? Here comes the Vort, and this is Mamish the Novardok. He says that true Kol Ha'ela Kudam Doshim. But many times, the reason why Kol Ha'ela Kudam Doshim is because there's a certain atmosphere, surrounding atmosphere, that allows you to conduct yourself in a certain manner. And he brought an example for that. He says, Rabban Soloveitchik says, if you know the history of the Soloveitchik family, Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik went from Poland to be a Rosh Yeshiva in New York, okay? He had to go through Berlin in order to get to New York. Okay, so he says, I was in Berlin. Rabban Tzadok says, as a child, I was in Berlin in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And he says the people in Berlin in the 1930s were much more nicer and
more cultured.
Yeah, than the Americans today. And he was talking about Americans in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
They were a very bekavadika and very, polite people.
Mm.
He says, but wait a minute, but just 5 years later they became into animals.
Mm-hmm.
So the pshat is like this. He says, when the culture is a culture of politeness and all that,
then
a lot of people are going to come together. Okay? But once things start unraveling, right, and the culture is not so you realize that all the kulam toishim over there is not true. It's not grounded. He says, Aaron HaKohen proved that his tzidkes was his own and not dependent on other people.
You mean despite there was no tanoim around there, no conditions, no watering, and it came from, it was inside. There was growth. It grew from inside.
Exactly.
Wow, what a vote.
So I think that's part of the vort of the Novardok, that sometimes, especially times of turmoil, that someone has to really dig down and find his own tzidkes and his own avodah in order to survive, which is a very...
a phenomenal idea, and I think correct in connecting them. And the truth is, I think, to really understand the chiddush of the Novardok, just to return to actually the end of his words there, which fit in nicely now. He says that the Novardok is actually for Madrigas Adam is full of mashalim. Gives these great mashalim, great down-to-earth mashalim. And he says the best way to understand this whole way, this choice between internal growth and going to overcome something, he said, is if you just imagine a person has to get a railway. Okay, he's a poor guy, but he's got to get it's an emergency, it's a war starting or something like that, and he goes into, your person goes and you see a guy going to a train, and you go and see this guy sitting in a first class carriage. The guy's got a ticket man, this is your place, right? You don't know. In normal times, it's going to mean, what does it have to be going to mean? That there must be a more wealthy guy, a guy who's got money to spend. But what if it's the last train out of, the last plane out of Saigon, the last train out of Warsaw when war is about to happen?
Means he's desperate.
He's desperate. Really, he's a third-class guy. But here, there's no chance in wartime to overcome. That's right, he'll do anything. He'll beg, borrow, and steal to get on that train itself.
So what's he say that he wants to bring?
So he wants to say the fact that in an emergency, the guy decides, in an emergency, it could be a guy decides, Noach would have decided, there's no chance to stay, I can't just be my normal self of being in third or second class, I have to go into the first class, but it's not reflecting on who he was as a person, it was overcoming something.
It's a time of need, you're saying.
In a time of need as well. He says like this, he would do nothing in the time of Avram Avinu. He knows he can't be left behind on the platform. The whole platform is going up in flames. That caused him to go in the first class. He says the
bottom line.
Chazal are not arguing how great he was. He was that great X. There's no argument about it. It's
talking about us. What can we learn from him?
Correct. Was he therefore trying to overcome? He said, it's wartime. We've got to get in the first class because others we won't have a place on the train. Or that was the source. He really was a first class type of guy in general. And it's a festa. It's an unbelievable beer. It's first of all very glad. And it answers this question.
It's insightful in the Koiches HaNefesh.
Very, very insightful. When I read this, first of all, it explains something about me, and actually I'll share this with you. It's an interesting thing, because I grew up in a place in which there was, my first memories were I was in a shul. My father's shul was Orthodox, but there's a lot of people there who were not necessarily that Shomer Shabbos, and we were the rabbi's children, and my identity was very much built around the fact that we were on a certain level. We davened, we did the Ketz Shabbos. We expected. And it was only years later when I got to Gate to the Shiva, really my first experience of living among a normal frum place, that I suddenly thought, but I don't have to overcome anyone. Who am I? And that, Rabbi Ephraim, is the key thing over here. I really identified with this so much, because then I had to build, who am I? And let me just say a little bit about that who am I thing. on the one hand, Chazal are very clear that we need institutions. Chazal are full of institutions, right? Chazal talk about, you can start listing, Ein HaTorah Niknes Ela B'Chabura, right? A person needs to acquire Torah amongst a group, right?
Or chavrusa mitusa.
Chavrusa mitusa, another one. Either chavrusa or death, right? Or, that Kinas Soif and Tarba Chochma. Yeah, everything is it's not about the individual. It's not about the individuals. Chazal say, if it's a choice between, we need the framework. Chazal say, framework, external pressures, external influences, they will raise you, have a zon of, whatever it is, right? So that's also coming up soon as well. And Chazal are talking framework. They're talking about being institutions. But this is where the Madrigas Adam, I believe, is coming to say a useful, he said, within that, you need to see who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And Refrain, the way I think of it is like this. Again, you can hear this as something that really talked to me for years in different stages. Who are you? If you're building something, okay? So we're sitting inside on the 9th floor or something of a building, that one of these magical buildings. We were once to the second top floor of a nice new building. We're now going to be halfway up, right? Because they're building another 9 floors on top. And if you're building, we know you need foundations. You need very deep foundations. Chinuch is like that as well. Is essentially you have foundations and then you build floors on top of it.
The deeper the foundation.
The foundation. Now, if you build on quicksand, or if you build in places, it's going to collapse. It's not going to stand, right? You need foundations. The foundations, and this is my own way of understanding it, the foundations of Avodas Hashem are you. Where you access, who am I really? Meaning, some small area in which there's genuine cheshek, in which it doesn't make a difference. You're on the desert island, no one else around, you're not trying to overcome somebody, you're not trying to be like them, it's you. What's you? Who are you? Your area of Avodas Hashem, it could be a tefillah, it could be a very small tefillah, it could be, I have a geschmack in something small, right? Learning through a sefer once a week. That, obviously Chazal say you need everything, you need the chavrusa. No, but there's something more that Alter is saying. You need your engine, because otherwise it's quicksand. If you don't have if not the foundations, you're building on everyone else. Everyone else's foundations. But what's you? That's what talks to me about this, Alter's words over here. Because what he's essentially saying is, who are you?
What's driving you? What's going to cause you to steig? Yeah.
But what I mean is that it's not, this we're already adding, but let's just talk this out, because I think it's so fundamental. And this, we talk about the border of Zman and Ben Azmanim. If you like, that is exactly what happens, right? So I know that maybe you'll tell me that when was Ben Azmanim invented? It's, especially summer Ben Azmanim, right? That's a more recent.
First of all, the structure of the Olamei Yeshivas is not so old. I mean, for sure, we had Talmid Chachamim sitting and learning in shuls, and Talmidim who wanted to hear Torah from them, coming and listening to them. And
hundreds and hundreds of years.
That's for sure. But the structure that we have today is 200 years old. The question is, when did the current Bein Hazmanim of the summer and all that?
So that grew out of the Eastern European thing, which we called Dacha. They used to go, and from what I understand, it was not everyone left the yeshivas. Those who felt needed to, and you had these people carried on learning. There were two great times.
First of all, you have to understand that a lot of boys didn't have money to travel. So if you didn't have money to travel, then you stayed in yeshiva for a few years. But even those who stayed, they had ways. We have testimony from people who learned in Telz and other places where they would go out and go to swim, and they would go on in the summer Fridays, go to swim. And there was I was once interviewing a Talmud of Rav Gustman, and he said that his Rebbe told him about another yeshiva, who's the same time of Gustman here in Eretz Yisrael, that he was a great swimmer. That's what he remembered from him. Because the Intels, they went to swim in the long Fridays, right? So they had their ways. There's a fascinating letter from the Chavetz Chaim to his son-in-law, Mendel Zaks.
Yeah.
And, I deal with Bachrim who come from America to learn here for a year, and sometimes they take them, they take themselves to the extreme, right? And I show them this letter of the Chofetz Chaim.
What does he say?
The Mendel Zaks asks him, how many hours a day as a person? And you're going to be shocked by this, okay? But it appears, this letter appears...
How many times a day should a person
learn and deal with the rest of the things, right? So this letter appears in a sefer, like a 6-volume sefer, called Meir Einei Yisrael.
Oh, the classic old biography of the
It's not so old. It was compiled by a friend of mine, a chavrusa of mine from Chevron Yeshiva, named Aaron Nishri. He's a Rebbe today in Bnei Brak. He's my age. And he did a massive work.
So very young.
Thank you. I'm not 60 yet, okay? I'm almost there. Not 60 yet, okay? So he compiled a 6-volume biography of the Chofetz Chaim. And in the beginning of volume 6, you can find this letter. And the Chofetz Chaim answers his son-in-law, and he says, listen, number one, a person has to eat 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And there are hilchas derech eretz when you eat. And hilchas derech eretz tells you...
You can't just wolf down your food.
Exactly. You have to eat b'mitzinus. He says, number 2, you have to daven 3 davenings a day. Now that also has to be done in the proper manner. Number 3, a person has to go out to nature. I think he says every day in the morning, like a certain walk or something, in order to, it's good for his health and mental health and physical health and all that.
Yeah.
And number 4, he has to sleep, I think, 8 hours a night. Okay?
Yeah.
So Mendel Zaks asks him, so when is he going to learn?
Yeah.
So he says, believe me, if he is makpid on that and he learns the rest of the time, he'll be fine. Now, that's shocking, right? You would think of the Chofetz Chaim, like the...
Yom and Valayla.
Right. But
he's saying that there is normal life. The person has to have normal life. And I think, to me, and the reason I was asking about the Ben Azmanim thing was because there's a movement and there's talk against it and people wasting their time. And I'm not going to get into that. The fact that it's going skiing is not necessarily the Chofetz Chaim didn't necessarily say, you should sleep 8 hours. Then
there's
you go
certain things where it's going to be very hard to justify that this is it's going to help your steigen. Yeah. Right, I agree with that.
But I think, and this is where what the Madrigas Adam is saying, Ben Azmanim, forget whether you go skiing, a person needs time to find themselves, to find who are you. And Rabbi Ephraim, when I really understood
it's 100%. I think you're right that Ben Azmanim is the perfect time for that.
Because, hold on, there's no framework anymore. The framework is, this one's in the pool, this one's in Switzerland, this one is...
It's the perfect time to look over the Torah and say, wait a minute, is there something in Torah that attracts me personally?
Yeah.
Like Masechah Sukkah maybe,
but I'm talking more fundamentally than that.
Right.
I'm talking, if you boil, believe me, a week into Ben Azmanim, a week and a half, 2 weeks in, right? Let's say a week and a half, because otherwise it's too close to the other side, right? Week and a half in, all the framework is now gone. Okay, what is my tefillah? Do I have a geschmack in it? What is my limud HaTorah? What is it? No, I'm not even talking about the subject. I'm not even talking about big shifas finishing a Masechta. That I leave to the Mashkichon or Shiva, including you. I'm saying something far more fundamental. Is there something that, come what may, you're not going to miss? Do you have 10 minutes in the day of Avodas Hashem that you're going to be makbid because it's you? That is foundation. That is not quicksand. On quicksand, you cannot build. On foundations, you can build. Why? 10 minutes? 2 years down the road might be quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. It might be a morning seder. Who knows? But it's real. And that's what I feel so much that Madrigas Adam is saying. You can't constantly be overcoming. It needs to be internal. It needs to be not just escaping as an emergency. You're escaping in the railway.
It's a beautiful up-tition of the Madrigas Adam. 100%. I like beautiful, that. Beautiful. The great Baalei Musar, they say that Elul is like the vacation house for the nefesh, for the neshama. Like we just left the vacation house for the guf. All right, we're now going to the Beit Havra'ah, right? How would you translate the Beit Havra'ah?
It's almost like a recovery.
It's a
reconvalescence for the neshama.
Some people have this idea that Elul and Musar and all that is against life, right? It's opposing life. There's life, and that was in Ben Azmanim, and now we're going to fight life. That's a terrible mistake. What Elul and Musar is coming to tell us is how to live life properly. And I think that your Yesod from the Madregas Adam, that is a very good foundation of how to live your life properly.
Very beautiful. In Mitzvah Shem Rabbi Ephraim, Elul, onwards and upwards.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Times. We appreciate you joining us as we explore the stories and people that shape Jewish history. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with friends. Until next time.